Hey everybody, Jay Super Awesome here. I'd like to welcome you all to week number 40 of the TheHORRORman's SlashBack Saturday Challenge. This week's slasher movie theme is Slashers Abroad, and I will be giving my review for School's Out 2, also known as Dead Island, and also known as Island of Fear. Okay, so getting into the plot for this one. So normally this is where I would read the plot description off the back of the DVD or Blu-ray, but considering I don't read or speak German, I'm not going to be able to do that this time around. So instead, I'm going to give IMDb's plot description for this movie. So according to IMDb, Nina and her friends are stalked by a mass killer while vacationing on an island. In my opinion, that does sound a lot like the plot description for I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. So even though I didn't understand one line of dialogue in this entire movie, I can tell you with 100% confidence that that's not what this movie's about at all. My DVD copy doesn't have subtitles, and it doesn't have an English dubbed option, so I watched it all in German. So I repeat, I didn't understand one line of dialogue, or I didn't even understand one conversation that was had in this entire movie. But I was able to track down the director, and he has the first 8 minutes of the movie on his YouTube channel with an English dubbed audio. So that leaves me with some hope that somewhere out there is a copy with English dubbed audio. I just haven't found it yet. So with having gone back and rewatched the first 8 minutes with the English dubbed audio, it does go into the backstory for the killer that takes place 30 years prior to the movie's present day timeline. The movie takes place on a secluded island where we have a coven of nuns. One of the young nuns gets involved with a sailor. They would sneak off to their secret love nest on the island. Of course, she gets pregnant. It is explained that on May 1st, the day of ghosts and witchery, her child was born. It is also explained that the other nuns become green with envy. They tore the crying child out of its mother's arms, and they quickly hid it away and buried it alive somewhere on the island. I know, haunting and morbid stuff. Of course, this drives the young mother crazy, as it would anybody. She searches the island for weeks until she finally finds her baby's grave. As she closely looks at her baby's corpse, she realizes that her baby no longer has any eyes because the worms had eaten them out. So wow, we are definitely dealing with some deep and dark stuff with this one. People claim that the ghost on the island drove the nuns to kill the child. So shortly after, this coven of nuns are disbanded, but it's still believed that the ghost returned every 10 years on May 1st to haunt the grounds. And with that, it leads us up to the present day. And just to ease the minds of the slasher movie fans that are listening to this review, as haunting as the storyline sounds, it's actually not a ghost doing the killing, but instead a vengeful nun. And that's where this review is going to get a little tricky from here on out. I'm going to give my own interpretation of what I thought the storyline was about. So during the present time, it's 30 years since the day the young nun found her murdered baby. So we now know that we have a killer nun who stalks the grounds every May 1st. We also know that the killings are about to begin. So there is a professor who has bought the island estate, and we once again have a coven of nuns that is run by a headmistress, of course, and she seems to be trying to help out some young girls that seem to have come from troubled backgrounds. So I actually feel like, based off a few scenes we have, the girls are in some sort of recovery home on the island that is overseen by the headmistress. Now what's really interesting is that we have Nina, a surviving character from the first movie, who is still tormented by the events from the first movie. And there's a scene in this movie that I believe a therapist, now I'm not for sure if that was her title or not, but I believe she was a therapist. She visits the island and not only brings a videotape that has the killer, which appears to be speaking directly to Nina. Now I'm just kind of giving my interpretation here of what I believe is happening. But anyway, the killer from the first movie is on the tape, and not only did she bring this tape, she also brought the killer's super cool jester costume from the first movie that he wore while he murdered his victims. which was basically Nina's friends. She appears to be showing the stuff to Nina so she can face her fears, which kind of leads me to believe that's where the alternate title, Island of Fears, come from. Of course, we have characters who start disappearing as they are being killed off one by one. So that is my basic takeaway on what I thought this movie was about. Okay, so getting into my thoughts for this one. With this week's slasher movie theme of slashers abroad, we were simply challenged to watch and review a slasher film that takes place outside of the United States. And considering I reviewed the first movie, Schools Out, for the foreign slashers theme, I thought this was the perfect opportunity to talk about its sequel. And for the most part, I really enjoyed this movie. I just really wished I had a dubbed copy, just like the first movie. I would have even been fine with some bad dubbing. I actually enjoy some good bad dubbing from time to time, and this movie really needed it. I'm not going to talk that much more about the characters because I feel like I've already covered enough with the characters and the story, at least what I thought it was about. But I did at least want to mention the Nina character because she is the storyline's main character and a survivor from the first film. I've always thought of her as the German version of Neve Campbell, especially with the first movie setup being very similar and clearly inspired by Scream. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the most important part of a slasher movie, that is the killer and the kills. And I have to say that I absolutely love the look and the backstory and the setup for the killer nun in this movie. And considering she found her baby with no eyes, she seems to have a fascination with baby dolls with no eyeballs. Yeah, that's not creepy at all. I also have to say that this movie has an amazing twist at the end, and hopefully this isn't too much of a spoiler, but it's a super awesome face-to-face showdown. Just brilliant in my opinion. Even though the actual finale of the movie was a little underwhelming, the face-to-face confrontation was more than enough to make up for it. As far as the kills go in this movie, overall it has a pretty low body count, and that's pretty unfortunate considering I sat through the entire movie not understanding a single word that was said. I did really enjoy seeing the nun creeping around, and I also really liked that her weapon of choice seemed to be a pretty long spear. That was pretty unique in my opinion. I also wanted to mention that we actually have a girl who drowns in quicksand. Now that's a kill that you don't see very often. It was pretty tricky of the killer nun to lure her out to her death. Overall, Schools Out 2 is a hard one for me to recommend unless you are a big fan of the first movie like me. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Please like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know if you have seen Schools Out 2, or just let me know what you think about my review. And as always, I'd like to thank you all for watching.